Hello again, everyone. I am Kyle Flaherty, as you can see below me. Wait a minute, hold on. Like that. No, it's over here. I am horrible with this. I almost had your name under mine for a long time. I didn't, and that's Mike Hamilton.
Well,
see?
Your wishes are now
This
becoming
is
public
weird.
knowledge.
This
You
is
just
weird.
kind of wish you were me.
Right. How good does that look?
Looks pretty good.
That only took me 2 full days in Wirecast to figure that out. So,
Well played.
is that good?
That's very good.
Awesome. So we're here, episode 3 of Take a Look Live, and we're here from our headquarters at 21CT in Austin, Texas. And I'll get rid of our names now. We don't have to do that. Boom, just like that, just gone. And so what I wanted to do this week was actually talk about a few stories around data analytics that we're seeing. Then we're going to do an update around Heartbleed, and actually a twofer, if you will, Heartbleed, and then some of the stuff we talked about around tax, social engineering around tax day, and then kind of point out some of the data scientists, data analysts that are out there that we're following. So we're going to start kind of this new process, if you will, of story of the weeks, and follow up from other weeks, and then a profile of the week, if you will. And eventually I'll have cool graphics too that come in and out, and it's going to look awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Well, you can do that with your third and fourth days this week?
Right, exactly. So I'm actually over here, and if you follow at 21CT Inc. on the Twitter, we are, our trusty colleague Kim is tweeting live right now, and she'll put out the links for these articles. Or if you're watching this pre-recorded, well, not pre-recorded, I guess just recorded.
Post-recorded?
Post-recorded. You can find the links there as well. So this one actually was in Wired, and I love this one. We tweeted it out actually earlier in the week before, but I really like this one because it speaks to the fact that we have talked so much about data analytics, and really, I don't know, in a lot of cases it's been hype. We always talk about, the big in big data is facetious anyhow, but this one talks about this whole idea of Google flu trends. And if you remember this was heralded in tons of books as a great example of how data analytics is going to really help us understand flu pandemics and what's going on way before the CDC could do anything, et cetera, et cetera. But lo and behold, what we find out is it didn't actually pan out that way. And I thought that one of the bigger parts of the story overall that I thought was really cool, and you were talking about it with me earlier, is the idea of context. And he talks about thick data, big data, et cetera, but what is it about context? And we were actually just in a demo for a prospect, you were talking about content or context when it comes to data analytics. What is that you find so critical?
I think the biggest thing is that when we're having a conversation, without everything that's happening around us, it doesn't make sense. For example, all the hundreds of viewers watching us right now, if I were to make a comment about the weird word written on the wall over there, if they didn't see that, they would be completely out of context. They're just like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
What is the conversation about the red and green polka dots over on the wall? If they don't have that context, it doesn't make sense. And that's the same thing with this big data thing. Okay, we can get answers a lot of times, and I think that's what the point that the author's trying to make here is that you can get very specific things, but if you don't understand a lot of times the why, and the why is really what I think of more in terms of context. Certainly where we see our product playing in the actual space, which is not just that something happened, that I can see it, or that I can try to predict something, but why is it predicting that that's going to happen, or why did something happen?
Right.
What was going on around it? What was the temperature that day?
Yep.
What was the lighting in the room so I could actually see the polka dots on the word written on the wall? It's a terrible analogy, and I don't know why I keep going back to it. But
No, keep going. I mean, if it's bad, I say just let's do it again and again.
well, if you keep going, at some point, maybe I'll find something good out of it.
So, but I thought that one of the things that the author mentioned, and we see it with academics, we see it with scientists, et cetera, you try to actually remove context in a lot of cases in a lab, right? Because you actually don't want to influence different things. You want to get to an end result. The real world, there's none of that. And so to not understand, they give the example with the flu trend thing of, oh, shockingly, flu is up in the winter. Like, yeah, really? No brainer. But it doesn't actually show kind of the context of what's happening in the real world. And you have to understand that. And to do that, I mean, he argues that you got to get out there in the real world. Okay, fine, but that's kind of a utopian fixture if you're a data scientist or a data analyst. How are you going to get contextual data that actually tells you about behaviors in the world?
Right.
And that's the important thing. It can't just be machine data. It has to be behavioral data.
Yeah, and I'm gonna flip what you just said on your head in terms of the experimental lab environment.
See, that's where a graphic would have been awesome.
Yeah,
Like an anvil.
if there's a button to like flip the image.
We'll do that in post. That's a
what you said
video
was
thing.
in the lab environment you're trying to remove the context, and I would actually argue that you're trying to accurately and precisely define all the context is what the lab environment is doing. So that it's
Okay.
not that I'm missing context,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that I know what it is and I've perfectly defined everything surrounding this bubble, and I perfectly define the context rather than remove the context.
All right. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that in the context of what we were talking about, it's a little bit different. There was a couple other things too that I thought was, were really good kind of in this article. I'll go back to it. Oh no, I'm still on it actually. I'm not on us. And they talk about this idea, and I agree with it a lot. Is this you got to set goals? Like what are the goals that you have for data analytics? All too often people are, we're going to do data analytics. Okay, why? What are you going to do? And we'll actually, the next story, we'll talk about a really good example of a why. But we see this all the time from folks is, let's not worry about the how. Let's not worry about, you got to worry about the data, and you have to, of course, right? I'm not Pollyanna here, but you really got to focus on your end goals. What is the insight that you want to achieve out of this whole thing? And it's why we talk a lot about the fact that you've got to outline those things. You have to understand what are the results. Well, I don't want to say what are the results you want, because that's kind of, you're starting to predict your own wants and desires, but really what are the outcomes and what are the goals that you have for that? And if you don't come to the table with a goal, it's just bar charts and graphs and stuff like that. And I think that's what this Google flu thing was ultimately.
Yeah,
it was really pretty and cool, but they didn't define what the goal was going to be.
Yeah, ultimately you're getting to the tagline for I think it's an auto parts company that I find myself always going back to is, you've got questions, we've got answers. And defining what those questions are essentially AutoZone. Yeah.
I think it was AutoZone, right?
Or Napa.
Is that Radio Shack?
No.
Wait.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, no, you're gonna have to go look that up.
All right, as you keep talking.
But essentially those goals are defined by what questions do I have. So taking the Google flu pandemic, the question is, how can I predict, or when is a flu pandemic, endemic, whatever?
Right.
It is in fact Radio
Yeah,
Shack.
and I did that live.
Okay.
Just
Awesome.
to show everyone.
Hopefully they didn't see the rest of your search history.
Let me.
Ultimately,
Won't be that exciting.
Ultimately, those questions are what your goals are.
Right.
When is the next flu pandemic, endemic, whatever word is the appropriate in that context? When is that going to happen?
Right.
When is the next security breach in my network going to happen? When is the next fraudulent transaction in insurance or banking or
warranty
or health or warranty?
Right. Yep.
Those are the questions, but those are sort of specific operationalization techniques for those questions.
Yeah.
Whereas the bigger question is, okay, I'm going to do this analytics. What does that really mean? What am I trying to get out of it?
Well, and I hate to be, the marketing and sales guy, but it's like, what is the ROI? And now it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary in all cases, but it may be.
Time is money.
Right, but it also just could be influence of health, influence of child safety. Whatever it is, there's going to be a reason. It could just be political, whether it's literally political, you're in the government, or it's politically like, I need to give my boss better data about my PPC campaigns for marketing overall. I don't know. It's just an example.
What things can I talk about on Twitter that will make Kyle the most followed person on the planet?
Right, and that is one of the big goals for next week. So let's talk about another article, and it actually is a great example, I think, of someone who has done this. And I, as a Google Analytics user myself, I thought this was really cool. So this gentleman, I assume Jonas Lund, I apologize if you're not a gentleman, but is building a Google Analytics type look at, and if you know Google Analytics, it's pretty much just telling you how many people are visiting your site, when they're, and if you're good at it, you can actually build pretty sophisticated kind of reporting tools overall, and queries that you can run over the data whenever you want, et cetera, to report back from a marketing standpoint or an engagement standpoint for your brand. But what this gentleman did was actually do it for the art gallery, and he actually shows, and you can see it here, he's actually showing in real time 10 active visitors in the gallery, 15 in the external, and he can look at what they're doing and where they're going, et cetera. And of course, there's a variety of uses for something like this. This could be something that allows you to push traffic in one way, or what's the most what's the most exciting or popular exhibit, and are people using this restroom over that restroom? I mean, there's a million different things, and you can think of this from a variety of standpoints, but I love just the practicality of something like this. And you can automatically start thinking of how cool with this. And I know they use some of this stuff in like in Disney World, malls and stuff like that. But the way he did it, just using kind of a Wi-Fi mesh, and it was so simplistic. And I just love that, and that's what it should be about. Don't try to boil the ocean here and do this enormous types of thing and get all this big data and big analytics, et cetera. Find a practical use, a problem that you have, and go out and solve it with the data that you might be able to get. Like, that's the kind of information that I love to see. And I thought it was just gorgeous the way he did it.
Yeah, it was the map overlay on the gallery.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll pick that up again just so people can see it. But and you can actually, I actually have it. Oh, it's not working. Let's see if. I thought I actually had it running earlier. Oh, looks like maybe it's.
Oops, it says oops.
Yeah, or opsy, actually.
Oh.
But either way, it was earlier. Maybe it's down. And I don't think he's actually using Google Analytics here. But I don't know, actually. So, but, again, set up a mesh Wi-Fi network. You just combine it with custom-made software, and boom, you can track every it's a Wi-Fi-enabled device, of course. But at this point, who doesn't have that? Now, yes, privacy issues and whatnot.
Which is why he's installing a screen so that people can know that they're being monitored.
Right, there we go.
They can know
as
that
long
their
as I
privacy
know.
is being violated.
Right. So, I just think that is a really cool example of data analytics overall. So, hats off to Jonas Lund. Maybe that will be a new thing that we do.
Hats off.
Yeah.
And then you can even
tip of the
animate.
cap?
You can even animate the hats
Ooh.
off in the.
I like tip of the cap to Jonas Lund. And maybe we'll both get top hats. I think that would look good. Another thing I wanted to talk about was a follow-up
Maybe you should leave your hat on.
from last week. I think I'll get some hair first. So Heartbleed. We talked about Heartbleed last week. Want to update folks who, there's very few people in the United States who didn't watch last week's episode, but you want to update those that did?
Sure. So there's this thing called Heartbleed, and it's bad.
Yes. Awesome. And it's bad for what reason?
Because you think you're secure, and you're not. Now, I would argue that you're probably never secure, but
of course,
that's a whole other conspiracy theory. Maybe that's next week's episode.
Right.
Conspiracy theories by Mike.
Yeah, and so, it was an open
SSL.
SSL issue, and you could get people's passwords, etc. And if you use Chrome, there's an awesome extension that can show you if the site you're on is actually suffering from it. We found a few this week, actually, that we took some screen grabs of. And just be careful out there. But the question that I kept hearing from folks through the week was, is anyone actually like, no big deal? And there was a guy, I don't know if you saw this story, who posted his password on the Washington Post in the comment section about a Heartbleed article, gave his information out, and got completely owned, of course. He was just basically challenging the fact that hackers do anything, etc.
Right.
They took his WordPress account, they took his Facebook account, everything. So don't put your password out there. But New York Times actually has an article that came out today, about 2 hours ago, talking about some research from Mandiant, which we're very familiar with, of course, and the folks at Mandiant, that a major organization and company, which they don't reveal overall, actually did get infiltrated via Heartbleed and an employee's encrypted VPN. And really, and I think that the quote here from Mr. Golier over at Mandiant was, the main takeaway is that within 24 hours, Heartbleed's publication, it's being taken advantage of. And then this past Tuesday, a 19-year-old kid in Canada was arrested because he used the Heartbleed flaw to actually steal tax data from in Canada from their revenue system, their thing. So it was just, I thought that was interesting because Heartbleed's real, it's being used, people don't know it, yet. Yes, security analytics can help that. Network behavior analysis can help that. Blah blah blah. If you need help with that, let us know. But the second thing is it tied into the tax story that we had last week of watch yourself around tax day. Although then this was in Canada. Do they share the same tax day? They can't.
I don't know. They do everything like us.
Oh, now we just lost all of our Canadian viewers. I apologize.
Sorry, sir.
I apologize. I apologize on behalf of my co-host here. This is when I should put the names back so they know who's Mike Hamilton and who's Kyle Flaherty.
Somehow I don't think some people are going to be tweeting me about this.
That's true. You never know. Maybe we'll cause like a huge ruckus in Canada and become really popular.
Maybe we'll bring Twitter down.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe I'll attribute it to a fail whale.
Kim, are we trending yet on Twitter? Yes. All right. So we are. So that's exciting.
She had her fingers crossed.
Right. Exactly. So, but I thought it was interesting because those things are starting to mesh, and it just shows that this is going to continue to be a problem. Our former colleague and the head of the Application Threat Intelligence group over at Ixia, Steve McGregory. I think it's Steve McGregory on Twitter.
I think so.
It may be a bit different, but search Steve McGregory because that guy is sharing awesome stuff about security. But he made a comment today, and I don't, and I'm not saying he was saying this out as fact. He was actually asking a question or just posing kind of a
deep
thoughts with Steve. But he was saying that a lot of the sites that he had been logging into over the last 48 hours seemed unnaturally slow or unusually slow for him. And he was thinking, and this is a guy who knows his stuff, he was kind of just thinking maybe this has something to do with folks patching, there's a lot of work going on right now behind the scenes. Think of it as, plumbers in the wall, fixing pipes, as you're, in the bathroom washing your hands. It's like, why did the water slow down? Well, because the guy's actually doing the work right now. Right. So, in a lot of your websites, that is happening overall. So,
so just there was one other thing on the Heartbleed. I was reading an article that actually pointed to the actual original development of this extension into SSL TLS that introduced this vulnerability, and it was actually interesting because they actually released the name of the developer of the researcher, the PhD that actually did it. And they basically just grabbed his code and dumped it in there without sort of, maybe, I'm sure there was some checking and things like that.
Yep.
But it was just a little bit scary that literally they can tie a massive network vulnerability to a single guy. And frankly, I'm kind of sad for him that they released his name.
Yeah,
you got to imagine, because I gotta admit, I'm pretty upset. I got to go change all my passwords.
Sure.
And it's like, it's like when. Was it Adobe? When Adobe had their breach not too long ago, and I get we'll monitor your credit. It's like, well, they now have my credit card information, that all my, all my bills, my utilities.
Well,
I gotta go change that.
So I'm looking at the most updated list from, I think this is University of Michigan or Michigan State. I apologize. That probably is horrible to even compare those two for alums. But these are still vulnerable domains out there. I mean, look at this list. It's millions of
none of those sites I'm going to, by the way.
Well, no, but I've seen a few overall that you may. I mean, myrecipemagic.com. I think that's probably something that you go to for your Easter meals. So yeah, so there's a lot of different folks out there that we have to look at. So keep on the lookout. It's a nasty thing, and that is what it is. So the final thing I want to do is start highlighting kind of a profile of someone in data analytics. It could be security analytics, fraud analytics, whatever it is, a variety of things, and someone who is actually talking about this stuff out there. And this week we actually chose a personal friend of mine, Chuck Heeman. It's Chuck Heeman on Twitter. I'll actually throw him up there, show his his head. His head's way too big for his body in that picture. But I can say that because he's a friend of mine, right? But Chuck actually is the executive director of analytics at Golan Harris, as it says right there. But that is a guy that, if you haven't, you need to follow him. He is talking about things that are extremely practical from a data analytics standpoint. He obviously helps clients do a lot of this stuff and figure out how to do it, because this can be overwhelming at times, as we well know, especially for people who are just trying to get into it. So he is our first. I don't know, we got to come up with a good name.
Rockstar of the week.
That's pretty lame, actually.
Well, look at me.
Here, hold on.
Pretty
Let me. Mike Hamilton. Lame. I'll go back. There we go. We'll come up with something. And you know what? We'll crowdsource this, because that's what people do.
Is that what people do these days?
Yeah. So hashtag Take a Look Live with what we should call our tweeter of the week, and it should not be tweeter of the week, because I don't like that at all. But it also might not be someone who's on Twitter.
Right.
I mean, it could be a data analyst.
Could be a Facebooker.
It could be a Facebooker or an Instagrammer. Snapchatter? We're not going to do that. All right, excellent. So that is it for today. Anything else you want to talk about?
No.
You sure?
Pretty sure.
Wow. You just ready to wrap up this week?
Pretty much.
Go home?
It's one of those weeks.
Big plans for the weekend?
No. Which is perfect. Which is the perfect weekend.
This is a super awkward way to end this show. I really wish there was something else to say. All right. You know what I'm going to do to play us out? My favorite theme. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.